Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're doing a Hearts of Iron 4 tutorial on division design. This is meant for beginners. I'm not going to get into every super fine detail, but I am going to explain the whys and what to do's kind of thing. So let's jump into infantry design. Typically what you want is 7 infantry units, 2 artillery units. You want an engineering company, a recon company, signal company. It's optional how to support artillery. You could change it out for any support division or a logistics company or something like that. And then a field hospital. Now, you won't see this all in the support divisions over here. The reason why is because it's not researched even in the 1937 save that I chose. For whatever reason, Germany does not start out with all these. But moving on from that, the reasons why behind all this is because you want your artillery. You want 2 lines of artillery because it gives you a lot of soft attack. You want the 7 lines of infantry because it gives you a ton of health and very good defense even without the artillery. Beyond that, you want the engineering company because it gives you better entrenchment mostly. It also helps you cross rivers better and defend on hills and everything. You can see all the buffs are right here if you want to know what it does on absolutely everything. You also want the recon company because it helps you be able to scout out the enemy, give you better reconnaissance and all that. You want the field hospital because it helps you lose less men and lose less experience for your men. And then you also want the signal company because the initiative helps you attack faster. It gets orders quicker and all that fun stuff. Now, some things to keep in mind whenever you're making your own design, your own template. Let's say you don't want to go with just these standard things, or you need a specific unit or a specific type of unit, things like that. You really want to keep in mind combat width. You only want to do it by 5s up to 20, 5, 10, 15, 20 combat width. The lower you go, the smaller your unit will be, obviously, the less equipment. The less attack, the less health, the less everything, but it will help you in places like Africa, the north of the Soviet Union, or anywhere with low infrastructure in general. Things you always should keep in mind is that there's also hardness and softness. Softness is like infantry divisions, hardness is tanks. Heavy tanks have the highest hardness, infantry has the least hardness in the game. Actually, it has the absolute least hardness. Beyond that, that's basically the reasons. That's the reasons, the basic things to keep in mind when you're making your own divisions and things like that. Your infantry division design does completely transfer over just to your mountaineers division. It kind of transfers over to your paratrooper divisions, and it also does transfer over to your marine divisions. The reason why your paratrooper divisions are a little bit different, you do still want the 6 to 7, you could still have the 6 to 7 or even 8 paratrooper divisions just to give you that, mostly that defense and health and everything. But the reasons why you wouldn't have your artillery divisions there because they cannot be parachuted. Same for any air, any tank, regular infantry, and mountaineers. Paratroopers are the only ones that can be paratrooped. But you can use your support divisions because every support division can be parachuted. If you're going to be using paratroopers a lot, which is not a bad idea. You're always going to want to have support artillery with it. It greatly increases your soft attack, not perfectly, and not nearly as much as 2-line artillery would, but enough that should be able to help you. It's arguable if you want to have support any tank or support any air. Support any tank does help you with more soft attack, but mostly your hard attack is what it'll really help out with, so if you're going up against tanks. I typically won't because if you're using paratrooper divisions and you cross a tank, you're probably just going to lose no matter what, even with your piercing attack and your hard attack. I would say paratroopers are would be mostly used for Britain if you're Germany or something. So maybe a support anti-tank division wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. Really, it's all up to you. Other than that, you should pretty much keep all the rest of the support divisions if you can help it. You might want to drop 1 or 2, like maybe you drop the field hospital because your paratroopers are probably not going to be your frontline troops, and the experience you lose won't be that great. But it's really all what you think would be the best now that you have all the information you need at your hands to figure out why should I do this and whatnot. But now, moving on to your tank division design. Your tank division design, you typically want 4 tank units, 4 motorized divisions, and then you want to make something in the research tabs. What you want to do in the research tabs is you want to take whatever division it is. Let's say we're just going to stick with my light tanks. You would want to make one of the following things: either your what's it called? You would want your self-propelled anti-tank gun, or the Martyr II, as it's called for Germany's light tank number 2. You would want your self-propelled artillery gun, or you would want your self-propelled AA gun. What you'd basically do is just add those two to the line, or one of the two to the line, either the self-propelled artillery, AT gun, or AA, whatever you typically think is the best. AA is best at soft attack, AT is best at hard attack and piercing, and then AA is best at keeping the airplanes at bay. So really whatever type of division you're going to go for is what you throw onto that. You could mix it if you want to, but it's typically found that having 2 of the same is more often than not better. Now what you do for your support companies is you would do pretty much the same thing, but rather than the hospital and support artillery, you would go with a logistics company and a maintenance company. So you'd still keep signal, recon, engineer, and the 2 you would add for your tank divisions would be logistics and maintenance company. The reason behind this is because your maintenance company helps with your reliability. It's also important to keep in mind that it could be useful to throw on to all your infantry divisions when you're training them from regulars to trained, or whatever the name is. Basically the silver line going up and down is your most trained troops, as shown right here. This is trained. You would want them to become regulars, and you never want them to become green. So if you ever see that your troops are green, don't even bother going into combat with them, and just train them as fast as possible. Having a maintenance company added on to the back of them, or to their support divisions in place of something else temporarily, would be a pretty good idea, because you'd lose less equipment. That's especially helpful if you're in debt or have a shortage of equipment, as see right here I would if I started the game on the save. The other support company you would want, and the reason why, is the logistics company, because it helps cut down your supply usage. Because if you look, a 16 combat width, which is not ideal, but I just don't have anything unlocked for my light tanks, already takes up 1.28, and that is not even the same amount of troops as my infantry division has. You would typically get about, we'll just throw on 2 light tanks. To that combat with 20, it would be 1.5 or more. The heavier tank you get, the more supply usage it takes, and so on and so forth. So, having that logistics company greatly reduces on supplies you need, and can definitely help, especially in low infrastructure areas like most of the Soviet Union. Especially the more north you go and the more east you go. Not necessarily the west. And especially Africa, but at that point you lower your entire you lower your combat width also. So, one thing I did forget about infantry divisions is you could add on another infantry division and have 8 of them with a combat width of 22. The only thing you would necessarily need to keep an eye out for is that you need to find your offensive doctrine leaders. The reason why is because it cuts down on your combat width by 10, and that would take off the 2 and make it back down to 20 if you had 8 infantry divisions, and the extra health and hard attack and a little bit more soft attack and everything else it gives you is not a bad idea to have. Well, that's pretty much it. One last thing I could say is for your cavalry divisions. Your cavalry divisions do have a similar, you could have them use a similar layout as your infantry divisions, but they're not as good, and they aren't any less expensive or not nearly enough to make it worth it or anything like that. So it's definitely worth consider using your support division of military police, because your cavalry units have the most suppression out of all units, and your military police increases that by an extra 20% or higher the more levels you go down. 10% per each level, I believe. And they help with any resistance you may encounter, especially if you're Germany and France and you're waiting to invade the UK. So you basically just make 5 cavalry divisions, since that'll be about 10 suppression, and then you add on the military police and you're pretty much good. It is not, it's just kind of the all-around division that most people use, since a lot of people just don't care about military police and keeping them down, because it's just kind of a, honestly, it's kind of just an annoying mini side quest game to play while actually trying to fight. Anyways, that'll be all for today. Tomorrow, or in the next couple of days, we're going to go on about how you can use the AI to help you and not just kind of screw you over like it'll happen if you just kind of fight with the AI only. So, I'll see you next time.